All right. Happy New Year. Welcome to Catching Up with Jacob. Afternoon, morning, and good evening, wherever you may be. This is our brand new year, our first episode, and we wanted to welcome everyone. And Catching Up with Jacob, episode number, what is it, Jake? 219?
245, I
Okay.
think.
Got the numbers wrong. Yeah. But just
No,
wanted to
215. Sorry, 215.
215. Okay, I was gonna say, I was like, man, that went by really quick, and we just started the year. Thanks, Jay. Well, welcome everyone. Happy New Year. Catching up with Jacob, and here he is, Jacob Prash.
Blessings in Jesus. Happy New Year to everyone. Let's pray that we all experience God's grace, God's blessing, God's protection, and also an expansion of the power of the gospel.
Amen.
We're gonna need all that. Absolutely true. And down in Tennessee, David Lister. How are you, David?
I am doing well today. It's good to be back. Start
Welcome
a new
back.
year.
Starting new year, Davey in Australia.
There's
Good
51
morning.
more episodes for this year.
That's right. That's right. Davey, how are you this morning?
Yeah, doing pretty good. Just hard to believe it's another Saturday morning. Time goes too quick.
Saturday morning, Friday. Yeah, exactly. Well, welcome. Happy New Year. And Jay, welcome. Happy New Year. How are you?
Happy New Year. It's great to be here. Good to see the panel. And I can't wait to get into the news because it's already starting.
It's it's only been 3 days into the year. It feels like a week has gone by. But we wanted to welcome everyone who's watching us on Catching Up with Jacob live, and also those who are going to be watching us later. Welcome in the name of the Lord. Catching Up with Jacob continues to talk about current events related to prophecy, relating to what the scripture talks about, encouraging not only that, but also being alert for the things that are going on in the world. Just wanted to make sure you know where we are. We're on different platforms, including YouTube and Facebook Live. But when we go to backstage, and we do have a topic for backstage today, besides the questions, we will be not on YouTube and Facebook Live. We'll be in the other ones like Vimeo, like Rumble. And I'd like to say something about Rumble. If you have questions, send those questions through Rumble, please. And that's been going really well. And the questions on backstage will be asked through Rumble. We're on X, we're on Vimeo, we're on Telegram. We are looking forward to our new website that's coming up, memorial.tv. So stay tuned for that. And we're also on RTN, and you can watch some of those episodes there. And not only that, but we're also on podcast as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Jay. Jay, tell us a little bit about the podcast, but also tell us a little bit about the other channels that are growing. We want to let everyone know what they are and how to get there.
So as you can see, we have the podcast schedule running below us. Take this opportunity. We always talk about this. We have the thumb drives for the time when the internet is not friendly to us anymore. But the podcasts are also an opportunity for you to download these lessons and keep them locally for yourself. You can watch them on plane trips, on long car rides. They're just really accessible and always there for you. So please take the time to make avail yourself to it. I'd like to talk a little bit about Memorial Chapel. We're done with the book of John. So exclusively, anytime a Bible study, whether it be Sandy Simpson, whether it be Jacob, it will now be only found on Memorial Chapel. So if you have not, get over there and subscribe. And finally, for those of you that have not already, if you want to watch something without any ads, because you know the ads on YouTube, the ads on Rumble, they're pretty bad. You know where they're not bad at all? You can watch all of Moriel's content on X, and there is absolutely no advertisements, no commercial interruptions. It is ad-free. So please make sure you follow Moriel TV on X, and we look forward to seeing you there.
Amen. Thank you, Jay. Thank you so much. And lots to be done for this year. We got some new things coming up. So keep us in prayer. Plus the website, memorial.tv, and you can find more information there. You could also find other topics as well on our church's website and YouTube channel, ccodtruth.org, and our CCOD, I think it's Devort TV and Devort Truth on YouTube. Well, a couple of announcements before we get started. Speaking of Devort, Jacob Prash, where are you going to be at in the throughout the next month or two?
I have two speaking engagements lined up. One, of course, is with my friend Pastor Marco Quintana. That'll be at the Christian Church of Devore on the 19th of February, Sunday, the 19th of February.
January.
Oh, what am I saying? 19th of January in Devore, San Bernardino, California. Then on the 2nd of February, I will be at the Ark Christian Fellowship in England. Ark Christian Fellowship near Reading in England. That will be advertised on the Moriel website as well. I'd also like to point out that we have Moriel.tv, we have MorielTV.org, and we have RTN. We have our own service, so if we're ever taken down, we can't be taken down. We will go on our own platforms and our own service. We are here for the Lord. We are here to reach the unsaved, and we are here for you. But some of you may be able to come see us in person.
Amen. In real life. Amen. Jacob, you're also working on a movie coming up, right? So got to keep you in prayer for that.
Please keep the production schedule in prayer. Because of COVID and then because of the war in Israel, we've had delay upon delay upon delay. But God's timing is perfect. We are going into early pre-production. James and myself will begin working on the project in Hollywood coming up next week.
Amen.
Well, North Hollywood. We don't want to just be in Hollywood.
Yeah.
North Hollywood, not West Hollywood. Let's be very clear there.
Okay.
If you don't know, look it up. It's just inside joke. Well, can't wait for that, Jacob. That's going to be exciting. Good stuff. And can't wait for the things the Lord's going to do this year, especially in the mission field, equipping the saints. That's a big part of our desire, equipping the saints, equipping them to be disciples, to disciple others, to share the gospel, to have good topics and information here on Moriel TV and MorielTV.org. And we can't wait for Moriel.tv to be redone, and that's going to be really exciting. We're very happy when that time comes. So praise the Lord for that. With all that said, let's catch up, guys, real quick. 17 days before the inauguration, 17 days, and things already are speeding up in such a way that I'm just going to go through a list of things here, and I have Jacob comment on it. Jacob, we have drones over the nations. One political party is literally scorched earth policy with federal judges and making foreign deals with countries starting wars. We got bird flu and the cases rising up, economic turmoil. Now we got two major attacks on January 1st, Louisiana and Las Vegas. We talked about it in November that prior to the inauguration, we're going to see this ramp up exceedingly. And we're seeing these events. People are in fear. These attacks keep coming. It's not only in Germany, it's not only the UK, but now is in the US soil. Of course, the FBI says there's nothing to worry about. Carry about your day. Watch the football. Don't worry about it. Jacob Prass, are they activating cell groups? What do you see out there?
I've been warning for a very long time that people should have listened to Steve Emerson, who made his first documentary film long before the September 11 attacks even. He was ignored because it was not politically correct to pay attention to a man who was telling the truth. The Saudi Arabians had the Bush administration in their back pocket. September 11th happened. Bush continued to allow Saudi Arabians to have express visa entry into the United States. That was him and Cheney, of course. And with Obama, it became even worse as it continued with Biden now. Even people coming across the border, while Mayorkas, the border czar Harris, and just the Biden administration did nothing, knowing about the terror and the narco terror, among the other problems, the fentanyl, the human traffickers, etc., coming across the border, people not being screened for communicable diseases. They just didn't care. It looked like they were trying to destroy America from within and do as much danger to the national DNA as they possibly could. And it's continuing up to the present moment. They know that President Bush is going to restore border security. So Biden was taking the components of a border fence and selling it cheaply, taking what was needed to defend the border and selling it off, putting it on flatbed trucks, taking it away and auctioning it off at bargain basement prices. even though the American people voted for a more secure border, he tried to sabotage it right up to his last days in office. This is an evil, evil man, a corrupt administration, and the faster it's gone, the better. I only pray that God raises his hand against these wicked people. That's my only prayer.
David Lister, just going to go to you. These attackers, they've been, we know who they were, and I don't know if they're working alone, but we'll talk about that in a moment. Associated with the U.S. Army, headquarters in Fort Bragg, both of them been in Ukraine, both of them military. The one in New Orleans, and the one in Las Vegas. So the Cybertruck bomber, both served at Fort Bragg, both military background. Both seem to have some kind of activity in the military, but is this something we should look at or ignore?
Well, it's only coincidental. I mean, that they work together, same units, same place. And then, gee, it's just also coincidental that the Ryan Ralph, the man who tried to assassinate tried to assassinate Trump, had visited that camp more than 100 times.
This is all coincidence,
so
right?
Obviously, something's going on there. There is a connection. When something is just so coincidental, it goes beyond the odds. Then where there's smoke, there's fire. So could it be MK Ultra? Could it be CIA doing dirty stuff? Well, probably all of the above. But it's just they're taking wounded people mentally and turning them into weapons. Both of them had marriage troubles. Both of them were having troubles in their lives, and it's easy to turn people that are experiencing traumas in their lives, through manipulation, which the CIA is known for. So.
Jake, I'm going to go back to you real quick. Counterterrorism warns, experts warning that
Yep.
these attacks will continue, that they're imminent. Now, this is not fear mongering. This happened. A guy drove a truck, like in Germany, like in the UK, like in Europe, right through Bourbon Street at 3 a.m. in New Orleans. 14 people dead. He himself got in a shootout with the police. But the FBI is saying it's not related to terror, and they're investigating it. Who knows if they're going to be investigating further, because they want to drop it as quickly as they did in Germany. They're more concerned about gay parades and diversity training. But your thoughts on the FBI?
I agree with Representative Congressman Andy Biggs from Arizona that the DEI policies of the Biden FBI, the Federal Bureau of Intimidation, have been a disaster. One of the disasters was the appointment of this Alethea Duncan, this female agent who was the spokesman, who said it was not terror related. Now, she's either a liar, a moron, or both. But what is clear is this liar, cum moron, cum whatever she is there because of identity politics. She's only there because she's a black woman, not because she's qualified. She's obviously a numbskull. She's obviously somebody who doesn't know what she's talking about or what she's even doing. The FBI was forced to send another official from Washington, another senior agent from Washington, from the counterterrorism division of the FBI, to take over the spokesmanship concerning the post-attack investigations in New Orleans. But this is what you get when you get a woman like this. This is also what you had in the Secret Service with the shootings. And again, you had a ridiculous woman, unqualified for the job, who was director of the Secret Service simply because she was a woman. Or another one just simply because she's a black woman. This is identity politics. DEI becomes the priority, not the protection of the nation. This is what we are dealing with. And the real problem is the real question, how can so many Americans be stupid enough not to see this?
Yeah.
What will it take to wake them up? Now, fortunately, enough did wake up that they did not vote for the Democratic Party again.
That's right. That's right. David Lister, this guy made 5 videos on Facebook prior to the attack, even saying that he was going to target the French Quarter District. They knew about it, but they just played it down. It's on Facebook Live. They took the videos down already, but this guy's he's from Texas, but Shamsuddin Jabbar, he's an American citizen, but he is very much militant and violent, and he recorded himself doing it. The FBI said, "There's nothing to see here. Move along."
Yeah, because that's standard operation procedure for the FBI. 9/11, these guys were on our radar. I mean, just keep going right on down the line. This went over in Santa Barbara, your area. That guy was on our radar. It's the standard operation protocol. Every one of these are on our radar.
Hmm.
That's, we need to shake out so much garbage out of the FBI and the CIA. I hope Mr. Trump can do it. The last president said that he was going to destroy the CIA into 1,000 pieces, got his head blown off, and that was Mr. Kennedy. And so they do not like to be messed with. But this man, but this may well be part of a bigger operation of people who have pledged themselves to ISIS or are pledging themselves to ISIS and could be even parts of Al Qaeda. As we know, there's over 1,000 militants have been shipped into America. And that's not counting all the Afghan refugees who sent their own people in under the pretense to America that there was danger for them actually in their own country, and they were the danger. But we willingly brought these people in. So there could be a whole lot of people that are here that are very dangerous and will fight till we're all dead or they're all dead, one or the other.
Jacob, I wanted to ask you this: that there's been a threat in South Carolina. There's a big rig that shut down the highway because of a possible bomb threat there. In Texas, there's a possible bomb threat within the area of Houston. Obviously, there's concerns about the College Station connection with the guy who drove the truck, and there's also concern in New York because there was outside of Queens, a nightclub, 11 people injured. So you've seen, are these you think they're coordinated? I mean, are we going to see these things come up throughout the year? Because it seems like we're closer into the 17 days of inauguration, this window, and all kinds of things are happening.
What we have not seen is the kind of rioting and protests we saw when Mr. Trump was elected the first time. We're even seeing Democrats trying to hold out an olive branch, like the mayor of Washington, D.C., who's a horrible mayor and a horrible person, but she's holding out an olive branch. We're not seeing those demonstrations anymore. Mr. Trump got the majority of the vote this time, not the minority of the popular vote, and it's just not working for them. So now we're facing an entirely different kind of opposition. Whether it's coordinated or not is difficult to prove, even if it was.
At this point, yeah, absolutely.
Even if it was, it would be very difficult to prove it. What we can say, it is related to the failure to protect the border. It is related to giving out visas to Islamic students coming from Muslim countries and allowing Islamic immigration of the unvetted. It is related to the DEI policies of the Federal Bureau of Intimidation, what's become a useless organization with a history of corruption going back to J. Edgar Hoover. But now it has become a political police force, a Gestapo, as we've said before. And its priorities are DEI, not doing its job. It's incapable of doing its job. It's run by people who are either corrupt or stupid, or in the case of Alethea Duncan, both. And then when you have people like Mayorkas and Homeland Security and people like Merrick Garland as the Attorney General, forget about the FBI. The question is, will the Trump administration be able to turn it around and redeem it? I personally do not favor any effort to redeem the FBI. I favor its abolition and replacement. Perhaps by the U.S. Marshal Service or something else. I don't think the FBI should be allowed to survive personally. I think its duties need to be transferred to other federal investigation and law enforcement agencies. I just don't trust it, and I don't think it's redeemable. I hope I'm proved wrong. As for the CIA should be made an agency of the State Department. It should not be allowed to be as an independent entity and never should have been. The real absurdity of all this goes back to the Bush administration after 9/11. The most basic problem in 9/11 was the failure of the CIA and the FBI to coordinate with each other in the areas of counterintelligence and counterterrorism. This goes back to the personal rivalry between J. Edgar Hoover and Dulles in the late 40s. That's how long it goes back and how absurd it is. And the Department of Homeland Security, which is useless under Mayorkas anyway, did not even address the basic problem. The FBI is still under the Justice Department, and the CIA is still an independent entity. So the only thing the Bush administration did was rearrange the deck chairs on the Titanic. That's how useless Bush and Cheney were and are. And will be if you ever get a rhino again, they'll be just as useless. They'll be the same as the Democrats. But this is the problem. Homeland Security should be abolished. CIA should be made an agency of the State Department. FBI should be abolished. In my ideal world, that's what would happen. Along with it, I would probably abolish the Department of Energy and the Department of Education, but those are separate issues.
David, I'm going to go to you real quick. The podcast, Sean Ryan podcast, where Sarah Adams, the former CIA, I don't think she was a director, but she was a CIA officer, and she's explaining weeks before what the potential danger could be. And she describes that the U.S. has not faced anything that Europe has faced or other countries have faced, but it's coming here with 1,000 fighters and Al-Qaeda training and all that's been brought in. And these terrorists, he says, they could be undetectable. You can't really tell who they are and what they're doing because they bring them in from the Darien Gap, come through the United States. Significant insight. Well, what do you think? I mean, we listened to a little bit, not the whole thing, but I listened to a little bit of her podcast, and she describes pretty much what happened on the 31st. I'm sorry, on the 1st, because of the negligence. And the scary part is that she says that there's more coming. It's not the Al-Qaeda, it's not just ISIS, but these guys are trained to fight unto the death, trained to fight unto death.
Yep.
And Americans have not seen that kind of vicious attacks on their homeland. So your thoughts on that?
Well, I live in the state of Tennessee, and in several conversations I've had the past week, everybody's saying that they should be armed when they go out now, just carrying open carry, because they do believe that there is a threat to the United States by these people. They're individualist is basically what she said, which makes them undetectable, and they don't connect with other larger cells. So the lack of communication, electronic communication, makes them more undetectable. And when they get their orders to strike by whatever means, it's too late. And they just go off and they run through a crowd and then start shooting. And she said basically they will fight till they're dead or everybody else is dead. And so if you can imagine this man times 1,000. Plus, I think 1,000 is a low number. She's just saying
Very
that they
conservative
train
number. Yeah, trained.
1,000.
Just trained. Yeah, that's right.
But there's also, you got to remember, in the debacle of Afghanistan, we brought tens and hundred thousands of Afghanistans unvetted too over here. And the Taliban, who we're paying $400 million a month to, is sent their own people over here, sleeper cells, so we're in a fine mess is what's happening. People better really pray, because this is spiritual warfare, and pray for the protection of, because if you could imagine just all the time, just something happening day after day, one after another, it would wear people out. And is this trying to stumble Trump before he even gets out of the grade, or make things so bad? Because we have all sorts of problems in the Far East, over here, everywhere, which I think we're going to talk about later. Yeah. So it's not just what's focused here, but everywhere that Biden and the administration have been able to drive a nail trying into the coffin of America, they're doing it. They're trying to do it.
Jacob, yeah, I'm going to go back to you real quick because I'm going to switch gears to Europe and what happened in. We've gotten reports about Italy and Sweden, which it's not to be so. We don't get used to this. This is a terrible reports that we get of rapes and stabbings that happen in Europe all the time. But I did want to talk about the UK and the migrant crisis there and the problem
Yes.
there. And one of the solutions that Tommy Robinson put out on his new documentary put on the internet is the fact that he would deport the fake asylum seekers and he would deploy the military and he would basically guard the UK border, but they're unwilling to do that. The government is unwilling to do that. And the concern is that all these not only attacks, but also with Starmer, when he was part of the police,
Yes.
social services, and child protection, that the rape, the astronomical number of rapes in Europe, but in the UK, in the gangs, the gangs that raped all these young girls in north of England, not only have continued, but they were completely mismanaged. Nobody said anything. The police was involved, but they didn't want to say anything. So, your thoughts on that because it's unleashed this culture, this rape culture within the UK.
Look, the police lied under political pressure about Rotherham in the north of England. The police lied about Southport in the north of England. They're going to people's houses and arresting people for putting things on the internet for daring to tell the truth. Great Britain is no longer a democratic country. It is no longer a democracy. Either is Australia, either is Canada. The United States, for the moment, is the last man standing. The Republic of Ireland is seeing the same thing. They are attempting to Nazify, to call people who are telling the truth Nazis, extremists, hate mongers, white supremacists. They're lying and calling them and labeling them everything when they're guilty of nothing more than telling the truth. And that is true of Tommy Robinson. That is exactly what you're seeing. But you're seeing the same thing here. They called Donald Trump at Madison Square Garden. Harris's people said it was a Nazi rally, basically. Treason is nothing new. The problem is you can't legally call it treason as an indictable crime. It's very difficult to prove treason. Nonetheless, it is the ethical equivalent in the opinion of many thinking people. How would you describe somebody who could have stopped Joseph Stalin at the end of the Second World War, prevented the Iron Curtain from being built, or who could have stopped Mao from taking over China? Easily, because you're the only one with a nuclear weapon, and didn't do it. Instead, gave Stalin the iron for the Iron Curtain and gave Mao the bamboo for the bamboo curtain. I speak of Harry Truman. That man was a traitor. Now, was he legally guilty of treason? No. Was he a traitor? Yes. During the Vietnam era, détente, Johnson and then Nixon and Kissinger, trading with the Soviets and the Chinese while they were supplying the North Vietnamese with the hardware to kill Americans. Is he guilty of treason? You can't prove that. Was he a traitor? Yes, Richard Nixon was a traitor. He was an absolute traitor. He betrayed his country. Well, the same thing continues with the policies of Bush dynasty, of the Obama administration to this day. There have been people who got close to the White House who I do not consider to be traitors. I don't think JFK was a traitor. I don't think he was particularly competent in the way he mishandled the Bay of Pigs. Barry Goldwater was not a traitor. He was a patriot. Donald Trump is not a traitor. He's a patriot. But the leadership of the mainstream parties, Democrat and Republican, have both betrayed the country. If you voted for people like Nixon or Bush, or you voted for Obama or Biden, you voted for somebody who would betray the national interests and do so deliberately.
Yeah, I'm going to stay with the UK, Jacob, because I didn't want to go back to the US.
Okay. Well, the
Starmer,
UK is simply a parody of the United States. It is simply the way the United States is going. There's no difference. You've got rhinos in the Republican Party in the United States. You've got pseudo-conservatives like Boris Johnson's people in the Tory Party in Great Britain. Britain is, again, a country that has abandoned its democratic principles, abandoned the protection of its people. And it has allowed the Islamic vote to be a major, major factor in the Labour Party having any kind of a platform. What is happening in the UK in reaction, though, is a patriotic populism, not with the Conservative Party anymore. They've committed ideological suicide. There hasn't been a real conservative prime minister since Margaret Thatcher. What you have is a move towards the Reform Party, Nigel Farage's party. Nigel Farage is the Donald Trump of Great Britain. Now it's not only an exodus out of the Conservative Party towards the Reform Party, there is a big exodus out of the Labour Party to the Reform Party. The Reform Party is on the ascent in reaction to these things. The British government has done everything it can to suppress opposition to its betrayal of Britain. The Conservative Party is almost as bad as Labour. The Republic of Ireland, very, very similar. There is an Irish populism, but the corrupt Irish government, both parties, Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, and Sinn Féin, are doing the same thing, trying to repress Irish patriotism in order to pander to radical Islam and the extreme left-wing globalist agenda. This is what is happening. This is exactly what's happening.
Yeah, in Ireland, they just that law that passed last year came into effect as the Criminal Hatred Offence Act in 2024. It's now in effect, and basically you can't really say anything bad about anybody else, otherwise they'll be considered a hate crime. So that's pretty heavy. I'm going to go to David Lister. David, we watched the video of Starmer years and years ago trying to say that, oh, they're prosecuting all these rapists. In reality, he was correct. It says there has been no prosecution of any child grooming in South Yorkshire, for example. So this whole thing, it's a big lie that Starmer ran, that he was tough on, the gang rapes and all that stuff. It was absolutely a lie. They continue to this point. So many girls have been, destroyed. Their lives have been destroyed. Some of them took their lives. And yet he became prime minister. I mean, this is the crazy thing, that this is the guy that was supposed to protect the children, and he doesn't. Now he's changing all these laws, local elections, not local elections, not going to be happening until 2026. So all these things accompanied with the BBC saying is a fake grooming scandal. That's the next thing that's happening. The fake grooming scandal. They said these girls were fake. David, your thoughts on that? Because it's a debacle. What's going on with Starmer there and protecting, these gang rapists.
Yeah, they're having committee programs and they're having actual testimonies and evidence come out that there could be as many as 250,000 young girls that have been raped. And we're seeing this in Sweden. We're seeing it in the other Nordic countries, that wherever you've seen Islam import military age men, you have these rapes going on, and it's just vicious. And so he said he was going to prosecute him, but he lied to the people, and the people keep believing the lie. Maybe it's finally caught up with him. Let's hopeful that he can be exposed for what he is, and hopefully there will maybe justice one day for these young girls. But for right now, their lives are in tattered. And this Channel 4 that's going to run a program,
Yeah,
when the evidence is overwhelming of the women that have reported rapes and have not had prosecutions, and there's that legacy media over there is going to lie like they've done here.
Yes.
And hopefully their influence will go the way that it's gone here, to the trash can. People need to stand up and try to take back their rights. But I don't know, Jacob might could answer this. I mean, we're a much bigger country. We're much more spread out, and we're much more armed than England.
I
Can
thought they
those
were.
countries take it back?
I thought they were all about. I thought they cared about the safety of children. I mean, they got that the same thing we got here with the under 16 social media bill. They got to protect them from that kind of thing.
The Online Safety Act. Yeah, that's what they claim, right? That's what they claim, but in reality, it's they say this is all fake grooming victims, fake grooming victims. Can you imagine some of these girls that I read some of their testimony, that after they're being raped and in these gangs, they're giving drugs, so a lot of heroin involved in that, and they'd have to go to school with the children daughters and sons of the men who were raping them because the police won't believe them, and it was just torture after torture after torture, and it's gone under the rug for years. In fact, many politicians, even to this day, are not taken to task. They're just basically there's been no real inquiry, right? I think of like Jess Phillips, which is a UK MP that refused to inquire the rape gangs in the UK. She refused to do it. Why? Well, I don't know. Jacob, what do you think?
Doesn't want to offend the radical Islamic invaders of Great Britain. That is the reason. That is the reason. You know, it's always the same. Let's just look at the United States. It is the same. The left does not care about women or women's rights or abortion rights. Or they say these things to manipulate stupid people to vote for them, but that's not their concern. They're perfectly happy to have male athletes competing against women. They're perfectly happy to have biological males going into women's locker room and shower facilities with your teenage daughter. They're perfectly happy. You've got hypocrites, the Hollywood left, like Meryl Streep, the Me Too thing, and she stands up and applauds for Sharon Tate's husband, for Roman Polanski, who is wanted for having statutory rape of the 13-year-old girl, and Meryl Streep, Me Too, stands up and applauds him. These people are complete and utter hypocrites. They don't care about women. They don't care about blacks. They don't care about anything but power for themselves. It's just that there's no shortage of stupid people who will believe them. And that's what's happening in Britain. And that's what's happening in America.
If I may, I'd just like to draw a parallel that maybe not many people are considering. What is the common denominator between these three? Epstein, Diddy, and good old Islam.
Yep.
What is the common denominator? The abuse of children.
Abuse of children. We either kill them by abortion, we kill them slowly with indoctrination into sex at young ages. I mean, many people are saying that Child Protection Service in America is one of the largest purveyors of the children in the sex trade.
Well, yeah, this is what happened at the border.
It's countries like Ireland. You can add a fourth one, the Roman Catholic Church.
I was about to say that now you brought the other one. There seems to be a parallel between those who lead and those who influence society.
Yes.
That is very in line with parts of Islam. I won't say the whole thing.
An evil man who allowed child abuse systemically to proliferate. It's Cardinal Mahoney of Los Angeles. Why was that man not sent to prison or even prosecuted?
Yeah.
They all have the same father.
Yeah.
What about the Pope? The Pope knows exactly what's going on, and he's been hiding it out. So it's not just necessary to do these inquiries, but it's really a moral imperative. But a nation that is no longer have the moral values of Scripture and allowed Islam to bring their own morals. I mean, I was watching a guy on Speaker's Corner, and he was talking about just basically saying why the Muslims do this, and he was just talking about because the Quran says you can. The Quran you can. And that's very simple. It says the Quran allows us to be abusive to women. The Quran allows us to marry young girls. So they're just doing what the Quran tells them to do. Now, if I was in Ireland and you said that, or in the UK or places where freedom of speech is curtailed to the point where you go to jail for that, then you can't say anything. People won't say anything, and politicians won't even allow anybody to speak against this. So the atrocities that's going on in the UK over quite a bit of time now is now reached up to a level where I hope there's a lashback. I hope the people really react to this and Starmer's taken into account, because it is clear evidence that he did not prosecute hardly anybody with the problems in South Yorkshire and Rochdale. Never allowed it. He probably stood against it. The prosecution. Now you got Jess Phillips, who is standing against an investigation. So Labor doesn't even want to investigate it, Jacob. It's not even like we want to prosecute. They don't even want to investigate.
And we're having judges here release men that have raped children This one judge set 3 rapists free for that had raped this 6-year-old girl. So this is going over. They're releasing pedophiles like, oh, it's not a crime, it's a
Well, we
sickness.
had Biden who gave clemency to that judge Kids for Cash.
Yeah,
This is how evil Biden is.
sold children into these homes where they were abused for money.
Yeah.
It's horrible. And he gave them a pardon. He gave murderers pardons.
Yeah.
This guy, if you're wicked, you got a pardon.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, we talked about that couple from Georgia, that homosexual couple from Georgia that got 100 years each for
Yeah.
running. I mean, their own children. They adopted these children from a Christian agency, and then ran a sex ring party for them, and they were raped. They bragged about it. They filmed it. It was horrific, and yet it's a systematic failure. Policy, police, councils in the UK don't do anything about it. Fake justice system. And this is the worst of the worst. We hurt the ones that are most vulnerable, and has allowed basically crime to flourish because of the culture. There is a culture now that is ingrained within the UK because of Islam. There's a culture that is not only tolerated, but that culture actually promotes it at something religious. They have almost like a divine command to do this. They have a divine command to do this, and don't get in the way, because you'll pay heavy for that. And they got politicians who will defend them and put you in jail for talking about it. So it's crazy stuff, man. This is deep spiritual stuff. And Jesus talked about protecting children, and it's
this sounds like a divine command from Satan himself.
That's right.
Destroy.
You've got a Supreme Court Justice, Ketanji Brown, who was soft on.
Oh, yeah.
This woman has the heart and mind of an animal. She has the heart and soul of an animal.
Yeah.
And she's on the Supreme Court.
Yeah, we have to pray. We have to pray God brings judgment upon these people that are afflicting their children of this. So there's a great deal of for Christians to, take care of children, to protect them, to pray for them, to adopt them. I mean, that is part and parcel of what Christians are called to be. Go ahead, Jay.
I was just going to say the chat is talking right now about Starmer, and according to a couple of the people in the chat, Starmer was a good friend of Jimmy Savile, and Savile,
King Charles' favorite friend, King Charles' friend,
and that shows you. I mean, what an evolution from Savile, who was doing this back in the 70s and the 80s.
Got away with it for 30 years. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And now here we are in 2025 with the importation of a couple million followers of the religion of peace. It's being exacerbated.
Yeah, it's almost like they just literally lit the fuse, and everything is just completely being obliterated within that system, because you have a culture now that we gasp and we go, this is horrific. In that culture, it's seen as normal.
Commanded.
It's normal. Yeah, it's commanded. It's really not something.
They're gimme. Do what you want with them. They're cows. They're nothing but cows or animals to you, so you're able to do what you want.
Yeah. Jacob, obviously we know what the solution is the gospel is Christ, but in a society where this is happening and tolerated, and victims are ignored and the perpetrators are given a pass, what's the solution for this? I mean, is it any way to turn back?
Like this, when people dealt with people given over to such wickedness in their thinking and their actions, and often they were religious people.
Yeah.
Jesus said, how will you escape the judgment of Gehenna?
Yeah.
Nancy Pelosi goes to communion and says she's a good Catholic and she's 120% pro-abortion. How will that woman escape the judgment of Gehenna? Now, I know how I'm going to escape, because by the grace of God, I turn to a saving faith in Jesus. That's the reason I'm going to escape. But how will people like this, who are doing these things to children and to the unborn and to society and to the nation at large, how will they escape the judgment of Gehenna? Hell awaits them. They've been given over to it. They're just in the waiting line for hell. And it's very unlikely that very many of them, if any of them, are going to repent and believe the gospel. Joe Biden is in line to go to hell. Nancy Pelosi is going to hell. Barack Obama is going to hell. And it is very unlikely that they're going to change directions in their lives or turn to Christ. Very unlikely. I believe they've been given over to it.
Yeah, well, look at the Labour Party in the UK. Keir Starmer, the same thing. He said exactly the same thing. Who was head of the Crown Prosecution Services from 2008 to 2013? He was Keir Starmer. He brought justice to nobody. He hid all this stuff, and now that he's taken to task, he'll put you in jail.
He's
If
an
you
enemy of justice and an enemy of democracy.
absolutely.
Well, we
David,
do
go ahead.
know that Jesus said, for these people that have hurt these children, it would have been better they'd never been born or thrown themselves into the sea before they've done this. And one day, an angel whose face is continually before our holy God will take them to the lowest depths of hell.
Let's not forget, though, we are in a season of birth pangs. And with the birth pangs, as we said last week, there are times of contractions and times of easing up, respite. We are going into a time of respite. There are actions underfoot in Denmark, in Sweden, and in Germany, and somewhat in France to deport Muslims, radical Muslims. We have the emergence of Mr. Trump in the United States. We have the emergence of Mr. Farage in Britain, Geert Wilders in Holland, possibly Le Pen in France. Now, I'm not saying any of these people are saved Christians, but they're certainly more favorable to Christian concerns and to biblical-based morality. And they understand the wickedness of Islam and of the DEI agenda. Also, in Eastern Europe, countries that were formerly under the Soviet thumb in the Warsaw Pact, those countries well understand the dangers of Islam and the dangers of the extreme left, having been under it. So we are in a time of respite. Let's thank God for that. And we need to pray for these leaders that they will get power and use the power wisely for the good of the nations.
Yeah, Jacob, but how do they deal with the culture, though? I mean, there's so many European citizens now that are Muslims. How would you deal with that? Just thinking, okay, it's a time of respite, but in a practical way, it's in the culture, it's in society.
Okay, but you understand that the overall population of Britain is still 85% Anglo-Saxon and Anglo-Celtic.
Right.
And all of the minorities are not radical Muslims. You have Africans, Afro-Caribbean saved Christians in Britain. You know who would uphold some kind of a moral standard, particularly the Pentecostals. You also have a minority of Arab Christians who understand what Islam is. Yeah. So they're not that big, but they're big enough to do damage, and they're being pandered to.
Yeah, because if you say that it's 85%, but where are they then?
Yes,
because small minorities doing this, there's no pushback. There's no.
Well, again, they voted for the Labour Party. They voted for the Conservative Party, and now they're turning against it. That's what we see happening in the United States, and that's what we see happening in Britain with the Reform Party.
Yeah,
I only hope something like this takes root in Australia and New Zealand.
Yeah,
I know one thing we can do here, Marco, in America is a lot of these younger Muslims have student visas. You can cancel a student visa and kick them out of the country.
It's going to take some guts, and that's my point. It's going to take some guts. Not been there, or it's going to take a major fight. It's going to take some because how are you going to undo this? I know we can talk about in a sense, and theoretically, yes, those things are possible, but it's going to have to take guts.
Those can be done with a signature of a pen.
There's one thing the Republicans are good at: disappointing a lot of people.
Yeah, I got no problem with that.
And I just don't want to set up some kind of expectation, in a sense of like these.
But it is one way they can do it.
20 years ago, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 5 years ago, 1 year ago.
But if we start seeing a rise in terrorism from Islam and everything, it might be something that can be done right along with deporting migrants from other countries and everything. We've got criminals, and so You just
I
keep
see it,
moving them out.
I see it happening in countries where it has not been as affected as much. But I think of places like Belgium and France. These are the examples that I'm trying to talk about.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
how do you overcome that with the population and they have the councils and they have votes
Yes.
never go for this. They will
Right.
never go for that. So what is the Rubicon been crossed? Is my point.
One of the
Probably in
things I've
Europe.
had,
I don't think it has here. I
Right,
know it's
right.
pretty bad. I don't think here because over there you got to remember that work people after World War II going back to France, they brought all these Islams from Morocco and other places to come and work. And then the liberals said, oh, they work for us, so they should bring their families over. So they brought their families over. We're talking after World War II and into the 50s. And then they made them citizens. And so now they've got,
yeah, but David,
three generations.
I live on both sides of the Atlantic and I see
Yeah.
Europe firsthand. New York, Illinois, California have gone as far as these other countries in Europe, as far as Belgium.
Yeah.
They have the blue states in the United States have gone just as far. It is the heartland of the United States and the red states that are making a difference nationally. I grant you. But what happens with Newsom in California, that's the same mentality, the same things you see with these countries with the left-wing governments in the EU. It is exactly the same. I'd also point out something else that's interesting that illustrates the change or the respite. Normally, it is the rhinos who are out to sabotage a conservative president like Trump or a pro-conservative or libertarian administration. It would be normally the rhinos, the Bushes, the Romneys, who's fortunately gone from the Senate, or soon will be. It is usually people like that who try to sabotage the conservative excess of the party. They're agents of the left within the Republican Party. It's the Bush, House of Bush, Cheney people like that. This time, just in the battle to get Mr. Johnson to be able to keep the gavel as House Speaker, the three people who voted against him in the first vote, Thomas Massey, Ralph Norman, and Keith South, whatever his name is.
Everett.
From Texas. They are not rhinos. They are people who were complaining that Mr. Johnson was not far enough to the right. They were not voting as leftists. They were voting as right. Now that shows there is a change in the party. Whether you like Elon Musk or not, X has made a difference. It has neutered the power of Silicon Valley to a very considerable degree to over what it was. And also, X has nullified the power of the legacy media. The legacy media does not have the power it once had. This election proved it. Hollywood does not have the power. The Bruce Springsteens and Lady Gagas don't have the power they once had. The Barack Obama does not have the power he once had. 1 out of 4 black males voting for Donald Trump. A very high percentage of Hispanics, and in some districts, some counties in Texas, a majority of Hispanics voting for Donald Trump. I was just in Texas. So there is a season of respite. There is. That is the hope. How long it will last, that depends. We must pray and make maximum use of this period of respite. That is the real battle. Because if these people who've lost power, if they ever get back, they're going to come back with a vengeance.
Yeah, there's one thing about dictators like that or people in power like that. They don't let it go very easily. They don't let it go very easily. Once they have it, they don't really let it go. And by the way, X is true about X until you talk about Elon Musk, and then you're banned. Then you're banned from X. So
yeah, that's the problem. Is we thought he was for free speech, but when it comes to if you go against his opinions, or maybe go against his bottom line, suddenly you find yourself banned.
Yep, exactly. So there is something to that effect. There is something to that effect. I want to change over to Asia real quick because what's going on in China, Jacob, Korea, and obviously what seems to be some kind of naval blockade near the Miyako Strait has some concerns. And this is about China. They're imposing sanctions on U.S. firms, 28 of them. They are changing to a Mao doctrine within the country because of the economic free fall that they're
Yes.
in. And now they're holding provinces and leaders of those local provinces, just like Mao, holding them responsible because there's some protests and they need to make sure that nothing is seen on TV, nothing is seen to be against the party. So, what can solve all of it? Perhaps an invasion of Taiwan. They got about set to try to do it, in my opinion. But your thoughts, what's going on in China? Free fall, Mao doctrine, and now they
I
want
was
to.
just at the Straits of Malacca. I was just at Singapore 2 weeks ago. That is the point of vulnerability of China strategically. China can control what happens in the South China Sea to a large degree. It cannot control the Straits of Malacca. The United States can close it down with 2 cruisers. Then it wouldn't take that much. Um, China is vulnerable because of the Straits of Malacca, which you mentioned. But what is happening is this. I've said this, I think, on 2 other occasions here on Catching Up. China will do what Mao did in his confrontation with the Soviets on the Amur River in the 60s. After the Cultural Revolution, when Mao's own power base was threatened, he began an external war. Part of the aggression you see towards Taiwan and towards Japan and towards the Philippines, particularly, part of it is to artificially muster a national sense of cohesion and unity against an internal threat. Americans or the West usually refers to it as wagging the dog. This is the game that Jinping is in large part playing. The seriousness of what is happening to the Chinese economy is not being duly reported. Now, as far as these restrictions that China is putting on these Western companies, it is happening for at least 2 reasons. One, they're afraid of what Donald Trump has, or what the West has done to Huawei, but what Donald Trump is going to do to TikTok. It is a response to TikTok. Secondly, it is a frustrated expression of anger that American companies such as Apple and Tesla are beginning to disinvest from China and manufacture elsewhere. They're trying to do what they can to express their anger at what's happening to the Chinese economy. If Donald Trump comes into power and he begins to enact these tariffs, it is going to take a bad situation in China and make it considerably worse. The economy in China, I've been saying for some time, is far worse than the West admits. Now, Gordon Chang is usually wrong in his timing. His timing has been way off, but his analysis of the basic situation of the Chinese economy has been absolutely right. He's right when he says, he just gets the timing wrong chronically, it would appear. But I think the things that he said were going to happen 5 years ago, 6 years ago, are beginning to happen now. And this is what Jinping is reacting against.
No, absolutely. I want to go to David real quick. David, should we be concerned about what's going on in Korea, South Korea, this destabilization there with the president? We talked about it a couple of weeks ago. They try to arrest him for calling martial law. Police were trying to arrest some local police. The military got involved. People began to protest. So there is somewhat of a divided South Korea, which plays well into what you think of China and North Korea and the Korean Peninsula. Having a South Korea that's destabilized doesn't bode well for the area. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it is a bit of a mess because this is not usually the actions in South Korea. They're usually a democratic, everything's pretty stable, but there was this grab for power by the president, and then all of a sudden chaos, impeachment, and like you say, and they were going to arrest him, and then the army came out to stop it, and then the people are out. So there is, anytime you have such insecurity and chaos, it gives the devil a playground. And the devil in this particular playground lives in the next country north of them. And so it would not be, it would be a time of great distraction for them if they were to be backed up by China, to cause a skirmish there and try to drag us in. at the same time that they're trying to take Taiwan. So,
Right.
there's all these pawns that are all over the place, and the army being distracted, the people being distracted. You never know how distraction can play out. And so I would put it on a level of like a 6 or 7 in concerns.
One of the some of these supercomputers that they have, not the quantum ones, but
Yeah.
supercomputers, they ran these war scenarios, and one of the scenarios always happens is the Korean Peninsula is a trigger to all these
Yep.
other wars or make them worse. So this is why, you look at South Korea and you're like, what in the world's happening? The guy calls for 1 day martial law and they try to arrest him. It's crazy. Here in the United States during the lockdowns, Fauci called for, similar to martial law, and he's still free. But over there,
Yeah.
they have all these reactions 1 day, and they're trying to arrest him. But this bodes well for China. This bodes well for Russia. And of course, the concern, David, there with Korea is that if they're preoccupied there, it would be very simple for China to move along. And Japan's very concerned because of some of the naval ships that are in the area near Okinawa. They're very concerned that China's playing this game, and it's a game until it gets serious, of naval blockade in Taiwan and against Japan, which wouldn't go well because Japan has changed their constitution recently to actually have military now because they know this is a
And
problem.
nuclear weapons.
Yeah. So David, back to you. Japan knows exactly what China's doing, and a destabilized South Korea makes one less ally for Japan there, one less ally for the U.S. in that area as well. But it's almost like a gang warfare now because you got Russia, you got North Korea, and you got China. And I think Taiwan's a sitting duck, at least for now, unless Trump does something about it. But I can't imagine Biden would do anything about it at this time.
Well, I mean, Taiwan, what's the big prize for China is the chip makers.
Yeah.
Okay. So, after evacuating the factories, it should be turned into dust.
They know that.
And there wouldn't be much of a prize. Here, now you
Yeah.
got to go build it, so which
And they don't
would
have the
cause-
technological or scientific base to build it.
No,
If
they
it
don't.
went,
And in
you'd
the
only have
meantime,
silicon.
we have some places in Arizona and I
Yes.
believe in Nevada that NVIDIA and as well as the stock I own, which is Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, is building in the largest plant in the world, $5 billion plant. I don't know if it's finished yet, but it's
Yeah.
they've been working on it a while.
If
Yeah.
Taiwan went, you'd have the United States, Silicon Valley, etc. You'd have South Korea,
Yeah.
and you'd have in Europe, Holland.
Yeah.
That's what you'd have.
And Israel.
Yeah, but Israel's basically a economic colony of Silicon Valley.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
they have the
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
range.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to switch gears real quick as we're almost hit the hour mark, and just wanted to welcome everyone who are watching live and those who will watch later. We're catching up with Jacob. Episode 215 total, but the first one for the year. So if you're watching us live or watching us later, welcome in the name of the Lord. And we've been dealing with several subjects. We're going to get into Israel and the nations in a minute, but we're going to go also to backstage. We got one topic that we can't talk about it on YouTube. So go on Rumble, Vimeo, Telegram, RTN, memorialtv.org, Rumble, and X to find out what we're going to be talking about, as well as questions on backstage. But in the meantime, we got to finish this. Jacob, while we finished last week catching up, and then we went into the weekend, then we heard President Jimmy Carter, ex-President Jimmy Carter, died at age 100. Now, if you didn't know anything about it, like most young people probably wouldn't know anything about him, the way he's painted and portrayed in the media today, he was the greatest guy that ever lived. And some even said he was a Christian, right? So, but I wanted to get, you lived through it. David lived through it. I was a very, very young kid. I could tell you a little story about Jimmy Carter and where I came from, but his legacy, the Middle East policies. Okay. Let's start with the Middle East, or you want to start with domestic policies, but they're all joined together at some point.
I'll begin with him. He was from Plains, Georgia, from the Southern Baptist Church. and he made the term "born again" a household
Yep.
term that everybody
That's
knew.
right.
That was only used by saved Christians largely before him. Now it became a commonly used term because of him. Although he did not personally support the segregation, it was a segregated church. It was a white-only church. That was the tradition of Plains Baptist Church. That was Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter was a member of David Rockefeller's Trilateral Commission, same as George Bush. George Bush was a Republican member. Carter was a Democrat member when he was governor of Georgia. He was pushed into the White House by David Rockefeller's Trilateral Commission. Now, the Trilateral Commission and also something called the Bilderbergers were the predecessors, the forerunners of what we today call the World Economic Forum, the Davos Group, the globalists. They were the pre-globalists. They were the trilateralists. This is where Carter came from, and it's how he was put into office. His appointees were all people who were approved of by David Rockefeller. You know, that's what he was. Cyrus Vance was his Secretary of State. He also had the Polish American guy. Well, I forget his name.
Brzezinski.
Yeah, Brzezinski. They were all David Rockefeller approved figures, members of the Council of Foreign Relations. But Carter was a trilateralist. That's what he was. He was never a man of the people. He was a globalist before they called it globalism. That's where he came to power. He was also the first one in at least probably the modern times to bamboozle naive and undiscerning born-again Christians.
That's right.
Many saved Christians vote, oh, he's a believer, he's born again, and they voted for this guy thinking that he was going to espouse some kind of Christian values. Well, let's look at, and he disappointed, of course, then they turned to Reagan. After they were wrong about Carter, they turned to Reagan, and then, well, let's leave it at that. Let's look at the positive and the negative. He was given far too much credit for Camp David. Far too much credit.
Yep.
Anwar Sadat already withdrew from his partnership with the Soviets after the Yom Kippur War and knew that the fortunes of Egypt would be found in the West. He negotiated with Kissinger. So there was a predisposition by Anwar Sadat, who was later murdered by the Muslim Brotherhood, the same Muslim Brotherhood that Barack Obama wanted to leave in power in Egypt. Morsi's people. So Sadat was pretty open to it. Something happened in Israel. Nobody ever thought the Likud, the right wing, could get power because the National Religious Party was always in coalition with the Labor Party. That changed under Menachem Begin. The Likud came to power, and Begin came to office saying that he would negotiate a peace. So it was already there. Carter was given more credit than he deserved. Nonetheless, he did broker it at Camp David. So at least he has a legacy. Unlike the people who followed him, unlike Biden, unlike Barack Obama, unlike George Bush or Bush's son, he at least had a legacy. He did have a legacy. History is going to remember him for Camp David, even though he's given too much credit for it. The same as Reagan has given too much credit for the end of the Cold War. He's given too much credit for it, but he has a legacy. Okay. Secondly, the beginning of the collapse of the Soviet Union came about initially as a result of a renewed arms race that was not triggered initially by Reagan's Star Wars, but it happened when the Soviets deployed, I think it was SS-4 missiles at European capitals, and Margaret Thatcher and Carter came together and deployed cruise missiles across Europe against the will of the European left and the Committee for Nuclear Disarmament, the Labour Party of Britain. Under Thatcher, they were able to get this done. He did deploy cruise missiles against the Soviets. So he did somewhat stand up to the Soviets. Probably Mrs. Thatcher deserves at least as much credit as he does for getting it done, but it happened. I will have to give him that. I'll have to give him at least that. But otherwise, he was a catastrophe as a president. He was the personification of perceived American weakness. He let the Shah fall from power and let Khomeini come into power. That did not have to happen the way it did. if we had options with Bonnie Sadiker and other people, I forget the names of them now. There were
Yes.
Barbara Honecker, Bonnie Sadar, and others. There were other options, but Khomeini got power. He was also the architect of the very bad, very bad give back of the Panama Canal Treaty. If we were going to give it back, we certainly could have gotten much better terms. Now the Chinese are managing it, and
Yep.
America is being ripped off, and there's a violation of the terms of the give back. This was Carter. He was a complete incompetent. But despite the fact that he went to Annapolis, the Naval Academy, he was hopeless as a commander in chief. Absolutely hopeless. He had Davy Jones, an Air Force man, as chief of staff. They did not have enough helicopters. It was bad planning. The whole hostage rescue didn't work. He mishandled the hostage crisis from the beginning. He represented American weakness in the eyes of the Muslim world and emboldened them. That's what he did. Under Carter, the Soviets invaded Afghanistan. The Americans began supplying the Mujahideen to take vengeance on the Soviets for the Soviets' backing of the Viet Cong and the North Vietnamese in Vietnam. It was payback time. All right, Carter did that with Brzezinski, but
Yeah.
he did, and Harold Brown, who was the Secretary of Defense at the time. Okay, he did that, but he was a weak man. Everything he did failed. Everything he touched turned to absolute garbage. He was the president of double-digit inflation. Now, although he inherited part of that from the bad economic policies of the Nixon-Ford recession and the policies of the Fed, on the positive side again, he did appoint Paul Volcker, who took a firmer grip of interest rates and got the inflation down. Reagan was unjustly given credit for the decline of inflation. It began in the Carter administration with Paul Volcker, not with Reagan. But again, that is more to the credit of the fact that he was desperate and he had 22%. He had 22% inflation, and he had to do something. He, not like, in my opinion, would not have likely done otherwise. But he was the president of double-digit inflation. He's responsible for what happened in Iran. He's responsible for what happened in Panama. He was responsible for one mess after another. He was a failed president. Having failed as president and been fired by the voters after only one term in office, like George Bush Sr., having been fired by the voters after only one term in office, he remained very, very active. He tried to dictate policy as a former president when he couldn't do the job when he wasn't beyond Camp David. He had his book on Palestine was extremely biased against Israel.
Oh, incredible.
Extremely biased.
Very
he was
bad.
no friend of Israel. He was no friend of Israel. He was no friend of saved Christians. He really wasn't. He was a disaster of a president. He lived to be 100, whatever. I'm not saying, that I hated him. I don't deny that he did have a legacy and he did a few good things. But overall, he was a disaster of a president. And he was a trilateralist. He was a pre-globalist. He was from the Trilateral Commission of David Rockefeller. That's what he was. That's all he was.
Yeah, some of the problems, obviously, in the Middle East, Iran, Panama, what's going on there, Latin America, Nicaragua. I remember he was president when the communists came over. Yeah. So he refused to do things. He just refused. And they talked about the weakness, as perfectly said, Jacob, embodied a very weak president. Similar like today. You look at Biden, and now he comes out today and says he wants to deal with Iran. He says he wants to.
That is astounding. That is astounding. He's trying to leave office. He has 2 weeks left, and he's trying to go out as a hawk.
Yeah. He wants to bomb Iran as a present. I don't even know what that means. David Lister, you tell me what you think of Carter, because it wasn't very good. Jacob brings some good points that he did, but overall he was anti-Semite pretty much till the end of his life. He was involved in all kinds of denying the Holocaust and anti-Semitic movements and pro-Palestinian, even pro-Iran still, even at this late, he allowed it to
he embraced the leadership of Hamas.
Yeah.
He embraced
saw-
Hamas.
he
It's
saw
crazy.
Khomeini as something of a saint that could rescue the country, and so he brought him in, which has taken a beautiful country of Persia,
Oh,
which is American interference, and
such a beautiful
has
place.
made it into 55, 60 years now of Islamic terrorism, and has somewhat forced the Middle Eastern policy into the craziness that it's in. He loved dictators. He loved those guys for
For
whatever
some
reason.
reason.
Yasser
Yeah.
Arafat.
Yeah.
If you were a dictator, he was your friend, and this is where he got in trouble. And if they gave him a peace prize, but not that I think the Nobel Peace Prize is any good. I mean, they gave one to Yasser Arafat, an avowed
Jerry
terrorist.
Adams,
Huh?
They gave it to Jerry Adams and Yasser Arafat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, the thing's a piece of garbage. But anyway, he's just like, from my experience, when he was in office, I was out of work. That's what I remember a lot. And and I remember my mom and dad saying, "Oh, look, we're getting these CDs for 15 and 18%." And like Jacob said, it was 22%. And I say, "Well, you're only losing 4% a year." So, there was just no policy, and there was just no work, and it was just terrible during this time. And of course, yes, like he said, he did some things that were right, but he was always too late, like uh he had worked to get the hostages free, and they were all ready to do it, but just to stick it to him, they waited till 12:02 to free the hostages on inauguration day under Reagan.
Of
So
course.
it was all set, which helped set Reagan on the right course for nobility and conservatism and things like this, even though he had his own problems with all of the rhinos that were in his administration. But for me, he afterwards he had, he taught Sunday school. He did all these nice things, Habitat for Humanity, and these were all good things. But it's almost like these were covers for all the other chaos that he'd caused in the world. You know, Born Again became a joke
Yeah.
because
After
he did
him.
an interview in Playboy magazine and said he was born again.
Yeah,
You're looking at the
actually, in
interview,
fairness,
and there's the fold out.
that interview was done with an independent journalist and it was published in Playboy. He was not
Okay,
actually
either
interviewed
way,
by Playboy itself.
yeah. So anyway,
Imagine finding an article about a Christian guy on Play.
yeah,
That is
so
that is so
it just
weird.
was pain. He just was blundered his way through, and of course the operation to try to get these 300 hostages out, but he had like 4 helicopters. It was doomed to failure. So it was just not a good thing. He left office bumbling, and Reagan defeated him in a landslide.
Yeah.
So when you're a one-term president, you're seen as a failure. But what you should have watched is the way that the Democratic Party is treating him and
Oh,
lifting him up and building him up as this great man.
like Jesus. They think he's like Jesus now.
Then you're seeing the way they're going to rehab Biden's
Biden.
legacy.
Oh, what a mess, isn't it?
Yeah.
What a mess. Just as we closing, we got a couple of subjects I want to let you guys choose. Jacob, we'll start with you. We'll let you choose which one you want to talk about. We can talk about Qatar funding terrorism. We can talk about the assassination attempt on Bashar Assad in Russia, or we talk about the new regime in Syria, HTS, trying to placate and be the ecumenical movement now, meeting with European leaders and Christian leaders and trying to become some kind of a savior now, sort of like Osama bin Laden looking back at it now. So, which one did you want to talk about?
Okay, I'll talk about Qatar, if
Okay.
I may.
Yeah.
But just very briefly, what's happening in Syria, that they are the functional puppet of Erdogan of Turkey. What they say and they do is only what Erdogan tells them to up at this point.
Yeah, they made a deal
Yeah.
against the Kurds now.
Yes. It's Erdogan who's controlling Syria. It is not them. Okay. Now considering Qatar are the hypocrites of the Middle East. The Saudis don't like them because they've been seen as a threat to the House of Saud. It's where I think certainly Al Jazeera is based. Al
Yes.
Jazeera is misinformation on steroids.
Yes.
But here's what's important about Qatar. Qatar and Iran share the hugest natural gas deposit underneath the Persian Gulf in the Middle East.
Yep.
It is the natural gas is concentrated underneath the Persian Gulf. With the Ukraine embargoes against Russia and the natural gas not coming from Russia, that natural gas, which needs to be turned into liquid gas and transported to Europe, is coming from the United States. A bit is coming from Algeria and from Qatar. So Qatar has become economically important because of the natural gas, which it shares with Iran. Qatar tries to walk the thin line between the Shia Sunni divide. They want to be on good terms with the Iranians, and they want to be on good terms with the other Emirates. It funds radical Islam in Europe. It absolutely funds madrasas. It funds mosques. It funds Islamic clergy that are pro Sharia. It is not, but it is a astounding showmanship. They want to be everybody's friend as long as it's in their interest. What is really odd is both the UK and the USA have operational military bases in Qatar.
Yep.
Interesting. Yeah. Jacob, what do you think about the PA, the Palestinian Authority, banning Al Jazeera?
They're banning them, yes. Well, again, they're banning wanting to ban Al Jazeera. Al Jazeera is now attacking the PA.
Yeah.
Well, why? Who would be the natural heir to power if it was not the Palestinian Authority? It would be something backed by Iran.
Yeah. Hamas.
Hamas, very possibly, or
Very
Hezbollah.
possibly. Yeah, absolutely. David, we'll go to you. We got the assassination attempt, or you got what's going on in Syria with, I guess, was it Al-Jilani? Al-Jilani's the new Osama bin Laden.
Yes.
Yeah, he's the new bin Laden. He's the guy that, he's having his Hollywood career repainted over as I'm for Christians, I'm for all these group, a great man of peace. Hollywood stars have fallen, so maybe they're going to take their career out to there and rehab these people's image. Could be true. Jay Mike could talk to something like that, but they can rehab anybody. But the guy he's obviously a terrorist, but he's pushing forward like a propaganda. Why? Because his country needs money. And he'll say, well, look how, we're all going to be love, peace, joy. So will just please send us money so we can rearm our people. Rebuild our country.
Did you ever notice how he kind of looks like Sacha Baron Cohen?
Yeah, he
It's
does.
like
Yeah, he does.
it's like they
Got the skinny jeans too.
they prepared us with Borat to have a new leader of Syria. It seems.
Yeah.
No, it's quite amazing, isn't it? They're trying to rehab him and make him. This is an article from 1993. Anti-Soviet warrior put his army on the road to peace. Everybody claimed he was a man of peace.
He won't shake that minister's hand either. There.
Yeah, did you see that?
No shaking her hand.
No, that was the German foreign minister. Yeah,
Yep.
coming in. Nope.
Can't touch those women, man, unless they're in a bag.
Oh man, yeah, that's pretty nuts. Any thoughts on that, Jay? Any thoughts on maybe Syria? the assassination attempt on Assad, or back to Qatar and Al Jazeera. I mean, Al Jazeera does pretty good Hollywood production, I guess, for all the lies that they say. They might as well be a movie in the movie industry.
I mean, they are the basically they are the Hollywood of the Middle East.
That's
They
right.
I mean, what they report sometimes is good, but for a lot of it is very bent towards their ideology. Um, it's just the rehab of this Syrian jihadist
Yeah.
who's now the leader is sickening. But then again, I'm not so surprised because look who's backing him. He's one with the Orthodox Church. He's
Yep.
one with the Catholics. These people, they all have vested interests in Syria. And as long as he is willing to play ball, they probably are going to give him payola.
Trying to give some money. Hey man, Davey,
Just
what do
leave
you
our
think?
churches alone so we can
Yeah.
collect our tithes.
Correct.
Yeah, that's been the process throughout history. Just don't
But
touch us.
they have been torturing Christians there.
Oh,
Oh, oh,
they've been
oh,
pulling people out of buildings, shooting them
Yeah.
on the streets. The
Yeah.
footage is heartbreaking, and what's
Yeah.
crazy is nobody in the mainstream media will report it. Everything's fine. Everything's turning progressive. He likes gender pronouns. That's the story, not the slaughter of innocent
that's
civilians.
that's
You
right.
know, there is a thing called Hollywood,
Oh,
like Palestine.
Yeah,
And
No.
they actually have makeup. They actually have people over there faking deaths. And
Yes.
the real famous one is where a guy is crying over his baby little boy. Oh, they're so good with the mourning and the screaming and the hand gesture. And all of a sudden, the young kid grabs his itching foot,
yeah,
you know. And so
yeah.
you see people, the
I think
same
like
woman is killed like
yeah,
8 times. She's over here in North Lebanon, down in South Lebanon, and East Lebanon. You know, there
it's
are
all about
West.
propaganda. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
they have makeup. You know, we've seen films behind the scene where they have makeup rooms behind burnt out buildings where they have people over there making them up for death scenes and for dirty
Yeah,
scenes. You see them
that's Al
come out.
Jazeera for you. That's Al
Yeah.
Jazeera. Davey, your thoughts? Any one of those
Do you think
topics?
they pay scale out there, Jay?
No, I don't think they probably do. I think it's maybe a piece of falafel.
You get to live. You get to
Yep.
live for the next one. Davey, any
Oh,
thoughts on those that you liked?
hang on, I've got to take care of someone on the chat
All right,
who's trying
Yeah,
to.
yeah,
all right.
Yes,
yeah.
really bad.
Well, I'll go to
But
the next one.
Syria, yeah, I'll come back to Syria if I can. Just let me give
Yeah,
it
yeah,
a
yeah.
try.
Yeah. No worries.
Yeah.
So it is quite interesting what's going on there because the HTS is fighting along with the Turks against the Kurds. They made
Church.
this deal, and it's they want to eliminate them out of that. The Kurdish force fighting against the SDF, sorry, against the Turkish back force. So it's near Aleppo. So Turkey's watching this very carefully because they do want to eliminate the SDF there, which is basically the Kurdish force. So, what is the
We're
U.S. going to do?
pro-Western.
Yeah, what is the U.S. going to do, Jacob? I mean, you got 17 days. Are they out on a limb because Biden's not going to touch anything before he leaves? I don't know.
You know, the Kurds were betrayed by Bush. The
Yeah.
Kurds were betrayed by Obama, obviously, and the Kurds are going to be betrayed by Biden.
Ooh.
What President Trump is going to do remains to be seen, or what he can do remains to be seen.
Yeah.
I would say to Erdogan, look, you really want trouble? You can have it. How would you like us to back the Kurds?
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very dangerous situation in Syria. I
Got
think people.
20 million Kurds in Turkey. Don't
Yeah.
think we won't do it.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
part of southern Turkey is their ancient homeland.
Yeah.
That's
part of
right.
the-
That's one good feeling. And then western Iraq is their northern Iraq where the oil is their homeland.
Yeah. Davey, jump in.
Oh, yeah. Well, the disgusting thing is, look, you know, Syria's a powder keg. It's only going to get worse and worse and worse, and the destruction that's going to come to Damascus is going to be phenomenal when it comes. We've seen nothing yet, and you can see why that judgment's going to come and fall. I do if you haven't seen it, Marco, you did a great home Bible study on Isaiah 17 on the fall of Damascus and Christ's redemption. So check that out on YouTube if you haven't seen it. But everyone's making such a big deal. You'll see them everywhere. The protesters are out protesting about, oh, the poor children in Gaza, the poor children in Gaza, which, again, David was saying, a lot of it is made up. It's worse than Hollywood. Not saying that people aren't suffering, but the thing is, look, if you care about the suffering of Arabs, the suffering of Muslims, what about the other white community at the moment?
Yeah.
They're going through horrendous persecution. You're not going to hear anything about that on the mainstream media. The persecution of Christians, no one cares. So it goes unreported. The same is happening with the Alawite. When it's Muslim against Muslim crime, you won't hear it reported. It's
Yeah,
only
where's Al
on the white.
Jazeera? Where's Al Jazeera about that?
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, exactly, David. Or the Druzes or the Yazidis, or they don't talk about any of this stuff. So it's crazy. But Al Jazeera, speaking of a major production, what about in the church? Final topic, by the way. Catherine Kirk in Los Angeles. She's David, we'll start with you. She's an apostle now. We brought her up before. Jay sent me some videos. We will keep an eye on that. And she has a church in Los Angeles. I think it's near Echo Park, which is, if you know the area, it's a 5F church, 5F, which is the fivefold church, fivefold ministry. She's now graduated to be an apostle deliverance ministry. Wild stories. She's got courses. She's got online courses. She's got book sales. I mean, you read the website and it looks like you're reading a marketing campaign, to get this girl elected or something. So she is, asking for money. Don't send it to the psychic, send it to me. She reminds me of Mike Murdoch. He's talking about the sowing the seed. Remember Mike Murdoch? Sowing the seed, sowing the seed. So David, we'll start with you. She is a up and coming deliverance ministry star, as they say.
Well, she's cranking in the money, which will make her a star. And everything that she's doing is so out of the fake healings, fake demon cast out, and things like this. As we've seen all this in the past, a lot of it is just old carnival barker shields. You put somebody out there that plays a part, and you cast a demon at them. This has been done 50 times before. She's doing nothing new. She's an absolute false teacher, and she's taking for her a title of an apostle that is nothing that can be given. And look, here she looks like a Catherine Coleman,
Yeah, there are a lot of similarities to that, isn't it? Yeah.
The white and the KK, and so she's deceiving young people like she's something new. She's sort of charismatic in her approach and everything. She's attractive, and here's and this is the thing, is that people want something in their lives, but they're going to an experience that is nothing but psychological manipulation, and there's no Bible here. I've listened to some of her stuff, and it's all misused. It's all scriptures out of context. It's just teachings from the health, wealth gospel and the deception ministry gospels. Look at this, 15,000 people here. Just deceived.
You think about Los Angeles and you think about a place that is probably rampant with actual demonic oppression and possession. And she stands as a complete, like you said, carnival barker charlatan. And some of these people, no doubt, really do have legitimate issues.
Exactly.
But she brings up the actors.
Yep.
This is just the tradition of Amy Simple McPherson, Catherine Coleman, when she went off the rails, and she's just
Benny Hinn.
She's just inherited the mantle of that particular school of insanity, of crazy women in the ministry.
Yeah,
don't belong in it.
Benny Hinn, when you would go to a Benny Hinn thing, there would be people lining up hours ahead. I was invited to go to one in Pittsburgh one of a lady I knew, her son worked for Benny, and I was invited. And so I got there. They gave me a seat down front, wanted me to make sure I knew it. They showed me around the place, and so I'm sitting out there, and so this person's there. He says, "Oh, I've been healed. I've been healed. I've been healed." Well, where when you healed? I was praying in line, and I felt this anointing come on me in my feet. Well, what'd you have? I had these nodules all over my feet, and I couldn't walk hardly. And the guy says, "Okay, walk from here over to that chair." The guy does it. And he says, "Walk back faster." The guy walks back faster. Then he says, "Okay, skip over to them chairs." The guy skipped. Then he says, "Run back." And he ran back. So it's a dog and pony show. They see that you'll do what they say. And then he was first one in line. And they went through the audience and they're looking for people like this that said they were healed or were healed, and they put them, and that's how you get up on the stage. You become the show.
There has been an explosion in the deliverance ministries, though, especially we've noticed it here, the uptick in it the last 12 months in Australia. There's been a number of things promoting it, and there's a resurgence of it like we haven't seen for quite a while. Nothing new, but there is that it's infecting everywhere here at the moment.
Yeah.
Well, Davey,
what are you doing on February 7th?
February 7th. Oh, in Sydney. You're kidding me. Oh, boy. Great. Here we go again.
Yeah.
I wonder how much it is to get in, or is it free?
Yeah, and I wonder how often.
No. Register now.
Register now.
Yeah.
Registration fee.
I love Benny. Benny Hinn was really good about the offering. He would take up a big offering. You got these guys in these Kentucky Fried Chicken baskets. Oh, $6, $17.50 and more. So, but he'd let you in free, and so they collect all this money, and then they would do the count. And then all of a sudden the guy would come up and he'd talk to Benny, and Benny said, "Oh, stop the show. Stop the show. We haven't got enough to pay for this place tonight. And so we're going to take up another offering."
Man, he
and
took
everything.
A pay
You need to reach down and give, because this is not free renting this place. It is not. If you ever want us to come back, you need to support, and force people to do a whole second. They get the money, man.
Yeah, I wonder if it'll be like the Hillsong conferences up there. They pass the plate around every 20 minutes. It's kind of like at these conferences. You pay to get in, and then every 20 minutes the plate goes by you.
Yeah, there was obviously you talked about the resurgence of the deliverance ministries, and for people that don't know, because we talk about it as obviously we know what it is. Jacob, in a very short statement, what's wrong with the deliverance ministries?
First of all, where in Scripture do you see demons being cast out of Christians? The word ekbalo. It is just not even a scriptural concept, let alone a scriptural practice. Demons are only cast out of non-believers. They're not cast out of Christians. That's to begin with. Secondly, people don't want to take responsibility for their own lives, their own problems, or their own need to deal with sin. So therefore, it's easier just to get in line and get deliverance instead of having to pick up their cross and follow Christ. The people who propagate this thing are inevitably financial con artists, and their theology is non-existent. It is just taking texts out of context, making it a pretext. This particular woman is a disgusting, reprehensible individual in the same genre as Amy Simple McPherson, who also came from Los Angeles, that area. The same kind of lunacy, same kind of madness. Leadership is male, and she is not an apostle. She did not see Jesus. She does not have any of the biblical qualifications of apostolic ministry. She is just a con artist. But there are enough people to give her the success Satan wants her to have. These stupid people. I just don't blame her. I blame the stupid people who pay attention to her. The problem with Kenneth Copeland or Benny Hinn or Joyce Meyer, any of them, are the people who pander, who follow them instead of following Jesus.
Jacob, when you see a fivefold ministries, what are your thoughts? Because people get confused and say, "What's biblical?"
First of all, in Greek, one can make a perfectly coherent argument that it's a fourfold ministry because pastors and teachers are connected in the Greek text. But she doesn't know that. She doesn't know anything about scripture. She's just a charlatan.
Are there anybody, Jacob, with the fivefold or fourfold ministry today?
Original apostles, the original apostles, the 12 apostles, Paul, people like that did have that. They had that.
Anybody today?
No.
All right.
May,
That's
may
it.
I, may I just add
Jacob
something real quick?
touched on.
Go ahead, Jay.
Jump in there, Jay.
I just wanted to say this because, we're warned in the scriptures that the devil comes to kill, steal, and destroy the enemy, right? And
Yes.
to be honest, these people are in the character of their father.
Yes.
Yeah.
They steal money, they kill faith, and they destroy the witness of any good Christian ministry out there.
Yes.
They are despicable when it comes to giving hope of Jesus to anyone.
Yeah.
It's all about their power.
That's right. There was a movie that came out. It was last year or a couple of years ago. Greg Locke was featured in it. It was called "Come Out in Jesus' Name," and they did. It went massive throughout the nation, deceiving people, thinking that this is a biblical practice. What's the guy's name, Jay, that is in that movie? Besides Greg Locke, there's another guy that's pretty famous.
Is it Vlad Svicek?
Yes,
I believe
yes.
in that.
Yeah, he's big on the deliverance ministry. I go back to Jacob just before we finish. Jacob, this deliverance stuff and spiritual warfare type, didn't that sort of began before him? But Derek Prince was big into this.
That was, look, I knew Derek Prince and I liked him. He was a nice man. I didn't know him well, but I did know him, and I certainly knew some of his daughters rather well. And I agreed with him on so many things. But when it came to curses or when it came to this deliverance stuff, we parted company. He also personally knew Roman Catholicism was false, but yet he compromised on the ecumenical issue, even though he personally knew that it was false. I don't dismiss the many things Derek Prince said that I agree with, but that would be like Michael Brown. I agree with Michael Brown 85% of the time, but he's a bad man. He's a bad man. Now, I don't say Derek Prince was an immoral man like Michael Brown was, but it's the same principle. People can be a little leaven leavens the whole lump. You don't have to agree with everybody on every single point, but if they're off on a fundamental doctrine, and deliverance is a fundamental doctrine, casting demons out of believers is fundamentally wrong. The Holy Spirit is in a believer. A demon cannot be there at the same time. An unsaved person or an unrepentant backslider may be able to be demon possessed, but a saved Christian can only be demonically oppressed, not possessed. The word ekbalo is never used with believers. This is con artistry. When you see these deliverance things happening in these manifestations, what you're looking at is a combination of hypnotic induction and demonic deception. It is a combination of demonic deception and hypnotic induction. Oh, I was manifesting. I couldn't stop when I felt it coming out. This is demonic deception combined with hypnotic induction. That's all it is. Stage hypnotists can invoke the same responses.
Yeah, what's interesting about these ministries is the fact that a lot of them claim to go, they give thanks to Derek Prince and some of the seminal work that he did there, which is, it is a shame. It is a shame. Go ahead, David, let's finish off.
Yeah, there's also magician's tricks. A lot of times there's this zapping that people feel and experience, but there's magicians have been doing this a long time. They put this battery pack and have these coils going around their body under their clothes, and they can touch you and you're zapped. So this can happen. There's also all sorts of, like, I remember one of the thing when you had people casting demons out a long time ago, I remember that it was always the same ones going forward every week.
Yeah.
The demon went out and then it went back in. Then it went out, then it went back in. It
was like all kinds. It was Peter Dimitri.
It was all sorts of crazy
stuff. They were hiding microphones.
Yeah.
And somebody was listening with a headset and signaling Peter Demetrius through an earpiece what people were saying, and he was pretending it was authentic words of knowledge. I mean, these are con artists.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Well, 2025 has begun, and it seems like there's spiritual battles. and all over the place. So let's be alert, because the enemy, like a lion, he roams around seeking whom he may devour. So God bless you guys. We're going to go on backstage. We got a couple of things to talk about, questions, and we got a topic that we can't talk about on YouTube. So join us on all the other ones. Vimeo, you can join us on Rumble, X, Telegram, and you can find us there. And we will not be on YouTube or Facebook Live. So we'll see you guys on backstage.
Hello, and thank you for watching Moriel TV. There are so many things that are happening at Moriel Ministries worldwide, from the Philippines to Japan to India to Africa and back to Europe and the United States. So many of our brothers and sisters are spreading the good news of Jesus Christ to this lost world. We are so thankful for your prayers. God has been faithful and has blessed us in so many ways. If you'd like to partner with our efforts abroad and at home, please take a moment to click the link in the description and help us as the Lord leads you. Thank you very much, and God bless.